6:30, we're gonna go ahead and get started, out of respect for everybody's time. Welcome to District 6 Advisory Board meeting. Let's see if we have any people. Have enough right for format on.
7.
No, we don't.
We'll skip a couple of things. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Is there anybody fire here? Okay, see you over there.
Captain Casey Hochschild, Firehouse 3, 32nd Broadway. Fairly quiet here recently, but we expect things to change coming into the winter months. Everybody's gonna find creative ways to heat their homes. The things I would point out, if you've picked up the document over here on the side table, they have some information about vacant structure fires. We expect there to be an increase in those as there has been in previous years. Obviously, we have a number of vacant properties. We've had problems in them very recently. One structure, part of the South City, 700 block of South Estelle, burned multiple times. I don't know as the origin and cause of that, but I do know they had a person living in the home that wasn't supposed to be there. Time and time again. So if you see somebody inside of a vacant structure, in or around a vacant structure, I know right up here in Arkansas, we've had some problems with people just south of Palateria. Call 911, report these things. Because if we don't know there's people in them, then we're not gonna be able to maintain the integrity of that structure. It should be boarded up, secured. I believe that MABCD will come out and also enforce some of those codes as well. From the fire department side of it, obviously, we're a pretty aggressive department. We're gonna go in and make sure that we remove any kind of life hazards inside that structure if it's on fire. So we always assume that even though they look vacant, we expect those to be occupied. And so we go in and act aggressively and put hose lines and members inside. So it puts our people in jeopardy just as much as it does bystanders and property around that home. So the quicker we can get notification that there may be activity around those homes and PD can go out, then that's makes it safer for everybody. Home heating appliances, things of that nature, make sure that we don't have things overloading power strips or the power supply in your home. Make sure they're UL rated is a good way of looking at things. So obviously we all buy a lot of things, plus you off Amazon now. Make sure that what you're purchasing, that should say within the description of the device, if it's UL rated. If it's not, we don't necessarily know if those items have been tested and they may not interact appropriately with our heating devices, or the heating device itself could be faulty. So we don't want to see those things. If you're going to use some kind of a space heater type device, it should be monitored just as you would cooking or a fireplace. If it is new enough, it should have failover protection where it will shut itself off if it gets knocked over. If you have pets in the house or small children, a great feature to have. Make sure they're not put too close to combustibles. So that be that the curtains or drapes or your bedding, any of those items, because those over time are going to heat up and start a fire. Lastly, I'll leave you with, being this time of year, we also have a problem with carbon monoxide incidents. So make sure the flues from your furnace or your hot water heaters have been looked at and inspected, are free of debris. They're operating as they should. If you have questions about that, feel free to call somebody out, whether it's a gas company representative or the fire department. We'll come and do the best. Understand the fire department is not the end all be all of, yes, your appliance is operating correctly. We do have a lot of people who do things in their time off, but we're not going to be professionals to give you that opinion. We're going to tell you, you need to call out somebody that works on these appliances. But the big thing is, if we have an ice storm and we lose power and you have to utilize a generator, make sure it's utilized outside of the structure, not in the basement or in the garage, because we've seen those time and time again. Smoke alarms, make sure they're in good working order. Just check the batteries in them after we change the clocks. But again, make sure they work. And ultimately, if you have young people in the home, and it's good for adults too, because I've seen this in my own home. The one time the smoke alarms are gone off in our house, I was the only person in our house that woke up. So I've got a family of 5. Nobody else even knew it happened. So
You need a louder smoke alarm.
yeah, that's probably part of the problem. The big part of it though is I practice a lot with my kids and my wife, knowing, hey, here's how we're gonna get out. Have a plan, practice that plan multiple times, have multiple ways in and out of your home, because it doesn't always, fire doesn't discriminate and go, oh, they're planning for the front door, I'm gonna have fire back house. So make that plan, practice it, and then know that when everybody's out, they stay out. That, I'll yield to any questions you might have.
Any questions from the dad? Questions from the public? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Scott's online. Yes. We will go ahead and, is there a motion for the approval of?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there approval for the minutes for November 4th?
Still move.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. We don't have anyone right now from the police department, but Officer Johnson sent, a little paragraph that I'll share with you. I'm Officer Brent Johnson. I am the community policing officer for 11 and 12 Beats, which goes from the River West Street and Kellogg to 29th Street. Coming up, we have Shop with the Cop, today and tomorrow, shopping for families in need. WPD for shelters at Harbor House, which is bringing the holidays to families at our Harbor House Domestic Violence Shelter. Tippecanoe for Special Olympics on December 4th from 3 to 10 at the Texas Red House. They will donate 10% of the food purchases to the Special Olympics. And the crime stats are in the last 30 days, all violent crime has seen a reduction. Burglaries, larcenies, and auto thefts have all seen a reduction in the last 30 days. Anyone have any questions? He has his email on here that I'm happy to share with anybody has questions. So we will move along to the library report.
Hello, my name's Sierra Kelly. I'm the branch manager here at the Evergreen branch and also at the Angelo branch, currently closed but set to reopen in March. So for those of you who use the library regularly, just wanted to start with some upcoming library closures that happen between now and when we have our next DAB meeting. So the library will close at 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve. So we will be open most of the day, but we'll close early. And then we'll be closed on December 25th for Christmas Day. We will be open the day after Christmas. If you need to come into the library for anything. We will also close at 5 p.m. on New Year's Eve. So we'll be open most of the day, but closed in the evening, and then we will be closed on January 1st for New Year's Day. We have some really great upcoming programs at the Evergreen branch that are happening towards the end of the month. So these programs are designed for kids of all ages. On Friday, December 20th, from 2:30 to 3:30, we are having an imagination playground. So it's gonna be in this room, and then also we're gonna have the walls down, so we're gonna have the whole space. And we have essentially these like big blue blocks that kids can use to create their own playground. They can build it themselves, they can tear it back down. We're gonna have some activities and challenges related to that, so it's gonna be super fun. And then on Monday, December 23rd, we are doing, we're calling it Graham Cracker Candy Shacks. So rather than gingerbread houses, it's sort of our version of that, but it's gonna be similar to like gingerbread houses, but on a smaller scale. So it's it can be for older kids or teens or younger kids, as long as they have a parent with them, because it does require some fine motor skills and we don't want everybody eating all of the frosting. So if you have younger kids, you'll just want to come with them to do it. But it's going to be a really fun program from 3 to 4. That's the week of Christmas, Monday, December 23rd. If you're familiar with some of the librarians that work at this branch, we've got our youth services librarian, Sarah, and then we also have Parker Daniel with us right now. So he normally works at the Angelo branch, but he's been with us for a while. The two of them have teamed up and they're doing a big Kwanzaa program down at the Advanced Learning Library. That's going to be on Thursday, December 26th. That's the first day of Kwanzaa. So they wanted to have it in that space because they've had it before and it becomes a really big event. So they're going to have lots of different Kwanzaa themed activities and everybody's welcome to attend that. So fun programs coming up at the end of the month, don't miss out on those. And then, something else I wanted to update you about, so the library is now offering the Ages and Stages questionnaire, so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that. It's a questionnaire that helps parents evaluate how their children are developing. It is designed to be taken by the families of children ages 1 month through 5 years old, and it evaluates developmental skills. So the way that it works, we have the questionnaire on our website now. If you go to wichitalibrary.org/screen, you can take the questionnaire for your children. And then we have a couple of children's librarians at the Advanced Learning Library downtown who are trained to evaluate the results, and they'll meet with you one-on-one and go over the results with you and help you find the places that your children are doing really well, and then the places that they might need a little bit of extra help. And the great thing about having children's librarians do this is a lot of the things that we do in our programs and in Storytime are designed to help kids develop some of those gross motor skills, fine motor skills, literacy skills, social emotional skills. And so not only will they say, like, here are some of the areas where your kids could, use some development, but also here are activities that you can do with them at home, easy things that can help them develop those skills. So if you're interested in that, definitely go to our website. It's under youth, the youth tab, and then the actual questionnaire you go to, again, that's wichitalibrary.org/screen. And then you can also call the Advanced Learning Library downtown to talk to the children's librarians or talk to them in their children's room. Hopefully this is the very beginning of this program, but if it is successful, like we're working on training our book bus librarian in this, and then hopefully we can bring it out to branches as well. But for right now, we just have it at the Advanced Learning Library. And then finally, we are still collecting feedback about our spring programs, what you would like to see at the library. We have surveys at the front desk. You can pick those up on your way out tonight, or if you come back and visit the library, we have a little digital code that you can scan, or you can fill one out by hand, but that really helps us make sure that we're having programs that you are interested in and that you want to see at the library. Any questions for me?
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. We are now on our public agenda. This is a portion of the agenda that provides an opportunity for citizens to present issues that are not part of the regular agenda for the meeting. There is a 5-minute time limit for each speaker. We do have a scheduled item. We have the request to pave Santa Fe Street between Douglas and 2nd Street. Bruce Rowley.
Hey, thanks.
Hello.
I won't take the whole 5 minutes, Maggie, you know my request, but I wanted to take it to the DAB and make it official. I live at 143 North Rock Island in Wichita in Old Town. I've also have recently purchased and developed a property at 114 North St. Francis. That property backs up and we own portions of a parking lot behind it. Several other owners there have recently paved their parking lots as well. The remaining area primarily back there that is unpaved is the city street Santa Fe, which is unpaved from 2nd Street all the way to Douglas. So why does that matter? The dust that gets on the vehicles back there constantly is a daily challenge. Oh, we have images. Yeah, so this is looking north up St. Francis. You can see newly paved lots. This is looking south. There's our lovely Douglas and Spaghetti Works right there. This is also recently repaved. So you can see this is all paved. Basically everything to the west is now paved. You'll get there, I swear. Next one. No? Okay. That's good enough. So you get the idea, there actually is a paved curb up against the east side, but the rest of it is dirt. It is a mud pit. It is a dust bunny all summer long. The dust clouds blasting right down through that opening into Napsker Park is, in my opinion, unacceptable and not something that we should have in our downtown, in the core of our city. 2 blocks remaining. of unpaved street. Especially with all the private development that has happened next to it where we've paved up to the street itself. So with that, answer your question.
I would just share, I know that Bruce knows this, it is slated to be paved, but not until 2030. So just for what that's worth. We have been talking about this for a while.
Air quality is
Yeah.
really what I'm talking
No,
about.
I don't disagree whatsoever, but it is on the list. It's just a ways out. So
2030.
We're working on it.
Maybe we could, yeah, step that up.
I would
And
love to
I'd be
see that
happy,
moved up a little bit.
I'd be happy to
Wait,
jump
wait.
on your bandwagon.
2020.
I live on Rock Island as well, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Or
Happy
send an email.
to jump on your bandwagon.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Does somebody else have a question? I'm sorry. I think I interrupted somebody. Okay. Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah,
And I
get
did
the best
love
hell out of you.
Oh, yeah, look, there's our beautiful new Wizards Alley. We're activating the backside of that. I know that Hutton is activating the backside of their building back here, so increasingly, we're trying to activate this side. The road,
Yes.
not particularly helpful in that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Anna?
All right, now we can move on over to our agenda item number 6. Let me pull up the agenda, there it is. Is there anybody present who did not request to speak on the public agenda portion of this agenda and on an item that's not part of the agenda already? All right, we have someone. Sir, come on up, state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
I hope it doesn't take that long. My name is Terry McMillan, 4729 North Sullivan. And I have a couple of topics. If I don't look in the eye, I'm sorry, I didn't practice this. I wrote it down. I know it's more proper to look you in the eye. I have just a couple of topics I'd like to bring up. And the information I have comes only from the media. So whatever facts are there or not facts, that's what I'm basing it on, okay? So the first one is, I think we're all pretty aware that there was a little discussion between the fire union, the mayor, and the fire chief. And so Maggie, I'm asking you to be the spokesperson at the city council meeting or whatever, for what I'm gonna say, and however that needs to be done or not done. So I think a city commission should seriously evaluate whether what happened was an unfortunate miscommunication or if it was purposely misrepresented to cause this issue. And if you determine that it was purposeful, then should there be any disciplinary action? That's the end of that subject, okay? My second one is, I read in the paper today or yesterday, there's a proposed purchase of new WPD software to help them be more efficient. And so here's what I like to say about that. Because I'm getting kind of weary with government agencies, not just this one, lots of government agencies from the federal government down, purchasing software, paying for it, and it doesn't work. So I want to suggest that, I don't know if the contract's been signed or not, but if it hasn't, then I want to suggest that we make certain that there is a detailed scheduled payment / stop payment contract clause in there. And so if we decide to purchase the software, it should not be 100% paid for once it's been installed. I would suggest it be paid for over a 3 to 5 year schedule to allow time for an objective evaluation of that software to see if people are satisfied. And if all or portions of it do not perform satisfactorily, the contract should have a stop payment clause in there until it gets fixed. My whole purpose here is, I'm a taxpayer, and that's my money being spent, and if you don't put in the contract this stuff's gotta work before you're gonna get all your payment, that's a problem. And it happened a lot of times, not just in Wichita, other places. So that's my bandwagon speech.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak on an up agenda item? All right, with that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Ballard for new business.
All right, thank you. We are going to move on to new business, PUD 2024-0024.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Philip Ziebenbergen with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. First item before you guys tonight is a zone change from general commercial to planned unit development located south of 21st Street between Market and Park Place. It would create the Empower Planned Unit Development number 135. When it comes to the planned unit development, I always like to remind folks that it's a custom zoning classification and typically there's no PUD within the city. That is generally the same. The whole point of the PUD is when you have unique situations to where one standard zoning classification really just wouldn't necessarily be appropriate. Like in this case, the property is currently zoned general commercial, which allows quite a number of fairly high intensity uses. But it would require a zoning action to accomplish what Empower is looking at doing because they're looking to have events that may have entertainment and alcohol present, which require, in this case, would require conditional use even within general commercial. But they're also looking at issues related to a parking ratio, or the renovation they're doing is technically going to initiate coming into compliance with the landscape code when there's actually no place to put landscaping, and that would require a variance. So like a number of different things are coming together, which is why we have a PUD at this point in time. So I will let Ariel and Rebecca from the EC go into more detail about what multi-purpose space that this empowered thing is going to do. The building looks excellent. I drive by it every single day. But in general, they're doing like a commercial kitchen, possible retail vendor event space. They're looking at holding community events in their parking lot. Just a number of different things, having outdoor seating and dining areas in the alley that was vacated not too long ago between the alley that's between Market and Park Place, that is along their buildings anyway. So a number of different things going on in the site. As I mentioned before, in order to accomplish this, they need the use classifications of entertainment establishment and or nightclub in the city. The difference between those now is just capacity. They mean the exact same thing now. We redefined them a while ago. Where you're having entertainment, which is like music, DJs or dancing, things like that, entertainment by the city code in a space where alcohol is also present. Those typically in this type of situation are accessory uses, meaning it has to function with all of these other uses on the site first, and it just can happen to have entertainment and alcohol present at the same time. The proposed PUD language was talking about, so there's our task tonight, let me back up with this. Our task tonight is there's a number of different things that were requested in the PUD and staff has recommended changes to what they're requesting. It's going to boil down to screening, parking, and hours of operation for the outdoor entertainment. And so let's start with parking. They have a parking lot on the west side of Market, and they were looking at essentially having a zero parking requirement, which is not necessarily a bad thing. However, when you have a parking lot and you can utilize it for indoor things when it's not being used for a community event, that is what staff recommendation is saying essentially their parking requirement is what is in the parking lot now for the events that are taking place inside in the three buildings that occupy the space. And then when a community event is there, requiring a transportation and parking study, which is fairly standard anyway, because the community events would be happening in the parking lot. And so obviously then you can't use it. The good thing about this area, you also have Wichita Transit that serves it. You've got the Norma Plaza up north. So there's a lot of different options. And they essentially will have to provide a parking and transportation study when they go to get their community event permit. And so that is what staff recommendation is. Instead of a no minimum parking, which would be for everything, we're saying, hey, use your parking lot when you have indoor stuff and it's not a community event. And then you can provide your parking and transportation plan when we have a community event. Excuse me. Staff is recommending that a screening fence be installed along the west side of the parking lot. That is one, to have the visual barrier, but also help mitigate with possible sound transfer. It's not gonna do everything great. They're proposing that the sound amplification system be pointed north or northeast, which will be helpful because the residential properties are to the south and southwest. But it's just still providing some level of barrier there, so that's for the discrepancy between what was submitted and what staff was recommending. Regarding outdoor music, they provided proposed hours of operation, so that's something we don't typically see. Given the proximity to the residential, again, this is for outdoor music, live or recorded. Having hours of operation for just the music or live record or whatever. 10 AM to 9 PM on Sunday through Thursday and 10 AM to 11 PM Friday and Saturday. How that differs is they requested 11 PM during the week and midnight Friday and Saturday, so just adjusting those hours a little bit. Same thing for outdoor food and drink service, those hours of operation would match. Typically, if you're having an outdoor space, you're still having noise, so essentially we're trying to mitigate the noise factor for outdoor things. Indoor events wouldn't have to follow those we are in agreement with, what their hours are, but outdoor events would all have the same type of hours of operation, again, ending at 9 PM during the week and 11 PM on Friday and Saturday versus 11 during the week and midnight on Friday and Saturday. Other than that, that's all staff recommendation is that essentially differed from the applicant's request. We have not heard any public comment on this at this point. It is going to planning commission this coming Thursday, with a number of other things, please bring snacks. Anyway, so if you have any questions for me regarding zoning and what our staff recommendation is, I'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, we do have Ariel here with Empower. They can talk to you about what they're looking to do. And yeah, we'll find the questions. Sir.
So I really appreciate the hours of operation being stated that clearly and pulling them into a reasonable window. But with proximity that is to other landowners and as you mentioned, actually residential properties. Is it possible for the city to put a decibel level limit on this as well?
Well, there is the city's noise ordinance is based on the decibel level.
Okay.
So even during the hours of operation that music is allowed, they would still technically have to meet the noise ordinance during that time. Don't ask me what the decibel level is off the top of my head. But technically I know the noise ordinance is allowed to be louder during the day and then it cuts back for the nighttime hours. And again, there's a threshold. I don't know what time it starts. But essentially during the day, even if they have an outdoor event or outdoor music, they would still technically have to be within the decibel level of the city's noise ordinance. To where, yes, technically after our recommended hours of operation, there's still a noise ordinance that they would have to comply to, even if they were allowed to have it. We're just looking at effectively wanting, like, you're so close to neighbors, 9 PM on a school night. It would be pretty nice, if, people have to go to bed early or something like that. That's kind of where our standpoint is.
So is the decibel level lower when you are closer to a residential as opposed to, say, somewhere in Old Town?
No, I don't know if there's special areas that the city's noise ordinance changes as part of the city code, but I don't often delve into. My understanding is that the city's noise ordinance, just probably for enforceability, is standard across the board, regardless of where you're at. Sir.
This is probably a question more for the applicant, but I am curious to know how often or how many times, say, a year or quarter, they're planning to have the parking lot closed down, and what's the frequency that y'all are thinking for that so far?
Yeah, and I can cover two more when I present a little bit more about us, but generally right now we have about 1 to 2 events per year at No More Plaza. So for us, I think you'll probably stay on that same pace, being able to do something in the parking lot.
And then Ariel, can you describe in the PUD language, number 9 says events that include 300 attendees or more shall be limited to 2 events per week. Can you maybe delve into that a little bit more?
Yeah, do you want me to come up there?
Sure.
Yeah, that way I'm not corner talking.
I just don't want to be confused of what's a community event versus what events are specifically described in the PUD.
And I know Rebecca, she stepped out, so she's gonna. For us, a community event, you know, with the size of the theater, I think there is a little bit of in the sense that when we have indoor events and being able to do outdoor events as well. Our primary use, obviously, will be use the indoor theater still and do that. We wanted some ability to, when the weather is nice, but if we wanted to use a parking lot, things like that. So generally, from what I've understood from planning, is that still the indoor count obviously is gonna be what's different from the external community event. So I would imagine we'll only continue to have those again a couple times a year, but we wanted the ability in to be able to do different events. If it's a fiesta, no more nights or something at different points throughout the year. But given our team's capacity, that won't probably be that level of frequency at that site.
Go ahead, please.
No, and I was gonna say, I have a little bit of presentation that I gave you all, so if you have more technical questions, would it be helpful, or do you want me to go ahead and just kind of answer what order makes most sense? Maggie or Ron, I don't know what one would be better as well.
You can go ahead with your
Okay.
presentation.
Well, that might help kind of give you some of the background of what we're doing. So I went ahead and printed this out for everybody, so you all have a little bit of the presentation, what we'll be presenting on Thursday to the planning commission, as well as the floor plans of the overall. So I just want to briefly rewind quickly, just to kind of say who Empower is. So we're a nonprofit, and we actually office right here out of the Evergreen Community Center Library. The office is right on the other side of this wall, and so it's been an honor and a privilege to be in this space for the last 4 years, really impacting our community. And so our mission is focused on 3 things: workforce, education, and small business development. And so as we seek to empower our community, our team has programs in all 3 key areas. And really what we want to see for our North End, for our Hispanic community, is growth. And so if you look at the SaaS education level, we're offering GED, ESL classes here in partnership with Next Step Alliance and Goodwill. We bring in a lot of community nonprofit partners in this space to do educational events. So when you're not here on a Monday night, typically throughout the rest of the week, this space is pretty busy with a lot of events that we're doing, but also our partners in the space. When we think about small business development, we know that a Hispanic community starts businesses nearly 6 times faster than a Latina start businesses nearly 6 times faster than any other demographic, while Hispanics at large are starting businesses nearly 2 times faster. And so we've hired someone full-time here at Evergreen to focus on how do we start a business? How do we think about licensing? Maybe I'm getting a food truck and I don't know where to start. And so they're able to come here, meet with someone on site, both in English and Spanish, and really thinking about those core essential things to start your business, thinking about marketing, what other components are essential and needed. And the third thing is workforce. So we have a lot of individuals in this community who want to come to job opportunities and further educational skills. And so again, we're bringing in our partners, thinking about pathways to earn more, thinking about educational opportunities that individuals often don't know about. And so we, through a crazy story, a couple of years ago, purchased the No More Theater and went up for sale, and there was a lot of concern in the community, and we had a generous donor in the community step up. And so the last couple of years, we put together a vision, really thinking about how can we use that site under small business and really create this hub in the community to impact our neighbors. And so I printed some renderings in here that you'll be able to see, as I said, as well as the floor plan. But essentially what we're creating is, anybody been to Tulsa? There's a similar opportunity there called Another Road Market. And really the concept is, first, we're creating a commercial kitchen. So that is currently under construction. And so if you drive down 21st Street now, you'll see that off of 21st Street. That building will actually be done at the end of this month. We'll be getting keys, and then we'll be opening that first building here in January. That used to be the former Basham Furniture Rental Store. We'll open that up. Then that will be a shared use commercial kitchen. So any entrepreneurs who are wanting to start their business will have access to job opportunities at a really affordable price. It's a shared use space, so we'll manage the facility, we pay all the bills, but then they all pay a membership fee for different levels. And so maybe they're just starting their food-based business, they can have like a 10-hour a month tier, and then it continues to escalate from there. And so we'll be able to start that operations again after the calendar year starts, and that will be this first phase. And so as you'll kind of see on that floor plan, you know, really the patio space that we're talking about kind of has a covered area and probably seating up to like 15 people, individuals on that external patio.
On you back here, if you want to use your laser pointer.
Oh, perfect.
Green dot.
So in this space right here, where you see that building right here, we have torn that space down. And so that will be that external space out there that we'll have off of 21st Street. And so again, all that will, this whole facility right here in this part will be what's finished here in January. And then so we're raising the final about $10 million. So we've got about $2 to $3 million left to raise. And so we're making headway there. We've got a $1 million challenge grant. So we're pretty close to getting that finish line. And then we'll start construction hopefully by next August, September on this phase 2. And so that phase 2 then will be the rest of the project sites. So the No More Theater in that corner building. And essentially what we'll be creating there is a startup. So when we grow businesses out of the commercial kitchen, we'll have a state-of-the-art food hall and theater space where people will be able to go to. You'll be able to go there on a Thursday night with your friends or your family, eat there, supporting an entrepreneur who has a vision and a dream. And then you'll be able to buy their products. You'll be able to sit there, eat with your friends. And so part of the vision is, you know, this theater is an amazing space and asset for our community. So how can we do, you know, potentially a live music on a Friday night, or if there's a final Friday, we have an event there. Again, we really want to infuse culture and arts and really create this vibrant space. So when we're thinking about capacity, obviously we need more people to come through to support these small businesses and to really have this vibrant scene, but also we want to be able to do the live music and have space rec. So, you know, as I said at the beginning, we're still a nonprofit. Our vision is really supporting the art, culture, the small businesses, really kind of creating that up there. A couple of the essential things that we've talked through here is we'll have live music again occasionally on site. And then we'll also plan to have a bar operated on the site as well. This for us is obviously a bar that hopefully is a destination place where people across Wichita want to come to and support, you know, the operations and also support the entrepreneurs that you see on site. And then lastly, part of the space that we've talked about is the patio there as well. Again, not a huge capacity, but being able to have that seasonal space for summer, spring, and, you know, late into the fall that we'll be utilize right there on 21st Street as well. And so we're excited to be able to take this vision to real life and get this project finished. It's been a long conversation for us as Empower, but also the life of the No More Theater has sat there vacant for many years. And it's time that, you know, we bring it back to life and be able to do some really cool things on site. And so that's a little bit just about the operation. So I hope that helps kind of clarifies a little bit who we are. So hopefully that helps, and I can answer any more questions that you may have too, now that I kind of went through that.
I'm just kind of curious, you mentioned that the, I'm gonna call it the old J. M. McDonald building.
Okay.
Before Bash.
Yep.
That's a $10 million project.
So between all three buildings, it's a little over $10 million between all three. So the
Okay.
the corner building, which was a original Kroger store back in the 1920s, and then the former the Fashion Furniture store. So it is all three combined.
In the theater, has it been evaluated structurally?
Yeah, so we've signed on Hutton Construction to do our design build. They've done both. They're doing phase 1 and they've done evaluations on phase 2. There's no concern to be able to bring that back to life. Got a little price tag, but one of the rooms is pure black mold that seeves, you know, it's pretty moldy. So we got a lot of remediation expense, but that's why when I say 10 million plus, it's probably gonna end up being a little bit more north of that $10 million range. There's gonna be some extensive remediation to happen there.
What sort of capacity are you looking at in the theater?
From a size, spacing, we're still working on that. Obviously, it depends on where we have a furniture consultant that we're putting on board. We're probably looking in the 200s, maybe the 300s. We'll obviously have to go through the fire marshal, look at a lot of different components. So we're still a little bit off, as you can see on our seating there. We kind of just slated some things in. But I would say probably max would be in the 300s in that space if we wanted to have a large event there. I know Rebecca then was gonna speak. We had a couple of things to bring up. So.
Yes, good evening, Rebecca Mullins with PEC. We're the agent for the applicant, so we're handling the kind of plotting and zoning side of things. And I apologize, I had to step out. I was also on in DAB 2 and they moved me up instead of back, so I had to cover that. So I apologize. So I missed some of the other questions. So if there was a specific question I don't answer it, please do ask it again. You know, I heard Philip mention it. We did spend a pretty significant amount of time vetting a lot of the things that we knew would be of concern, both to planning staff and to the community. And so we really tried to be intentional with what we put in this plan unit development. But to Ariel's point, because there's so much that's still in motion, we wanted to leave ourselves a little bit of an open slate. That's the value to us of a planned unit development. It's an ability to kind of create our own zoning district and say, hey, we're doing something different here. We're doing something unique. But it's gonna be awesome if we can pull it off, right? Which we're gonna pull it off because they've got such a vision and such a passion for it. It's gonna happen. So that's what we're trying to do. The parking, we know that's gonna be a challenge. We're in agreement with coordinating that. We're not anticipating an outside community event every week, but we know that we wanna be able to have those, right? We wanna be able to activate that space, create some fantastic opportunities. So in those cases, those do require special licenses. A supporting documentation per what staff's included is that we have to coordinate that with a transportation type plan to address parking. So we're in agreement with that. That makes good sense to us. The challenge that we have really is in screening and in some of the hours of operation. So in particular on screening, you'll see, which one's later? There we go. So this alley was previously vacated so that we could have that outside patio space. There is screening that Ariel addressed there on the south side of where that patio is going to be. The zoning of concern obviously is from this parcel to the south. Those are all residentially zoned. The concern that we have with the requirement of permanent screening along this west side is that is just going to encourage vandalism, illegal dumping in that alley. And it's this parking lot 9 times out of 10 is gonna be no different than it is today. That's not to say it's right, obviously. If there should be zoning or screening from a parking lot that is general commercial to residential, it should probably be there now. But what we would implore from you all is to consider a modification to that. And what we'll be asking from the planning commission later this week is that in the event that we have an outside event in the parking lot, that we would utilize temporary screening from that large community event in lieu of a permanent screening scenario. Our thought is that provides that better separation in those really big events, but just day to day, yeah, there's gonna be more activity in the parking lot because we're activating those buildings, but it's still a parking lot. I will caveat there, the other part of that is challenging is we don't have a good way to connect from the building to the other screening because this is the designated alley for emergency access. So you can't vacate an alley this long here at the north end without giving them a way to get out. So that does have to remain open. So in a perfect world, we could, tie in our screening here to there, but that's physically not able to happen with the other things that have occurred. So that's number one that I would just ask that you consider that again, we'll be asking planning commission. And number 2 is hours of operation. If we weren't gonna try to have 300 people here, and serve alcohol, right? Those are the 2 triggers that require what would be normally a conditional use, or in this case, a PUD for a nightclub in the city. I know it's a buzzword, but that's from a zoning perspective, that's the classification. If we were just gonna have a dinner, if Connie's was gonna be here, in general commercial zoning, we wouldn't have that restriction of hours of operation, is our interpretation. I could be wrong, but.
You're not wrong.
Yes, I love it when I'm not wrong, it happened. But because we put that trigger of nightclub in the city, we're being honest, right? We're being transparent, we know what we're trying to do. We're trying to set up our PUD. We feel that restricting our hours to something that's more restrictive than the underlying zoning is doing our business and our proposed model a disservice. So we would just ask that you consider utilizing the hours that we've provided. Again, we're not sure that it's gonna be consistently that, but we'd like to be able to leave some flexibility for ourselves. Coming back and modifying PUDs in the future is not terrible, but it is challenging. And so we're going through the effort now. We wanna do it right the first time and get it in really good shape. So that's the couple of things I was gonna address. Thank you so much for your time. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that these guys didn't cover.
Curious on the hours of operation. So during the week, you had requested till what time?
So till 11 p.m. That was Sunday through Thursday. And again, we have them in different sections within our zoning, within our language. Some of that is outdoor music, some of that is the service of food. We'd be willing, if noise is the concern, to pare that back on the music side, if that's the one to concern. We don't wanna have to stop serving food out on the
So that-
patio.
That was actually my question then to the staff is, if we have a zoning ordinance, I mean, a noise ordinance, that controls that.
Not enforced.
There is an ordinance, the concern that we've heard is the noise ordinance is hard to enforce. It is enforceable, but it is hard to enforce, so the comment that came from the community is the
Well,
enforcement of
but
that is.
one of the things that was mentioned earlier was that there is the noise
There is.
ordinance, right? And so that you would be required to comply with that.
Correct, and we've got that
At any
listed,
moment.
at any moment, yes.
So, and in my understanding of the noise ordinance, it's been a long time since I looked at it, but it goes down in the evening. So I'm just curious if was a consideration in
It
the
is.
truncating the time they requested for.
So kind of to the comment of it's enforceable but hard to enforce. What's easier to enforce is a time limit. So if you
Ah.
hear music after 9 PM or 11 PM, that's a lot easier to enforce than how loud is that music? Cause the decibel levels is measured at a property line and you know, we have to wait until the cops get, like, it just gets, that's why it's hard to enforce. So a lot easier to enforce is, well, the time limit was set at a time. This outdoor music is still happening. It's, you know, now 1:30 in the morning and they're still, you know, jamming to AC/DC. So like, a little easier to enforce, but that,
You know, it's
that
not
was like,
easy,
I know.
come on now.
So that's where our perspective is, and that's why we've been fairly consistent about hours of operation for entertainment or noise generating activities. Is just the ability to draw a line in the sand and say, it is 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock or whatever. Anything past this, that becomes easier to enforce because the cops show up or whoever's there to enforce it and that activity is going on. That's enforceable versus how loud is it?
Philip, I have a question real quick. So is it somewhat explainable that you applied other zoning regulations that we've applied for the nightclub in the city to equal it back on the time, and then the same on the screening that, hey, this is kind of our normal, as we rezone, this is what we would ask?
Typically with entertainment establishments / nightclub in the city, hours of operation are becoming fairly standard. It's becoming a pretty regular request for these types of establishments. In this case, I will say that the 9 PM Sunday through Thursday is a little more restrictive. We typically work than 10, but this one also is a lot closer to residential with the sharing property. With the parking lot, I should say.
But this is only for outdoor events.
Outdoor, correct. The indoor, we agreed with staff, or we agreed with the applicant, and we're okay with those. This was just for outdoor, essentially noise generating activities, whether it be music or.
But it is also the outdoor patio, so that's the thing.
Patio, right, yeah.
Events within the patio. The patio space is the one that's a little concerning for a 9 PM because if you have a speak, and again, we've been very intentional with those speakers are gonna be directionally facing away from the residential. So there is the wall on the south side from that patio space that is, again, to try and create some additional buffer there.
Can that be carved out? The patio space?
Yeah. So, what she was getting at earlier, like say Connie's occupied this space and they had an outdoor patio like that, they could just do that right now. And the way the PUD language is written is they did specifically separate those activities. And so the board does have the opportunity to say, hey, you know, say we'll take planning staff recommendation for the music, but we are okay with the applicant's request for the outdoor patio. You do have that ability to get minute and specific.
I was gonna say, I just wanted to add on real quick, I know we're all up here dancing, the last backside of this presentation kind of has that patio space. So I just wanted to say from ours, you know, just as myself, and you know, I don't probably say, I didn't say at the beginning, my name is Ariel, and I'm the executive director of Power. You know, one of the things that I want to just clearly communicate is, you know, what we're trying to create here is just a space for community. And you see this right now going down 21st Street. We are very conscientious of our neighborhood already when we do community events and when we have our fiesta, on every October, we do free cleanups, we have corporate volunteers come out and help pick up the plaza, we pick up the street. You know, we'll do our fiesta, and then that Monday, we're back out there with volunteer crews. We wanna make sure we found it better, leave it better than we found it. Sorry, it's been a long day.
It's okay.
And so as we think about the patio space for us, you know, one of the concerns was, you know, we wanted to be able to, we're building a patio space, and in Kansas, really, you only got summer, late spring, and early fall to use that space. We wanted to have this place, so when you drive down 21st Street, you're like, I wanna go there, I wanna check that space out. It's not a large patio in the sense of some other places around Wichita. And so one of the concerns that we had with shutting down service by 9 o'clock is a food hall concept is you're gonna go inside, you're gonna grab your food from your favorite, you know, joint, if it's tacos or pizza or whatever it may be inside that space. Then you're gonna take it and wanna go sit down with your friends. One of the concerns we had was, well, in summer, it's like till after 9 o'clock, and it's one of the most seasonable times for that patio space was being able to make sure on the, you know, weeknight that we were able to be open a little bit longer than 9 versus telling everyone, well, now you have to go inside. Cause as planning did mention, you know, you can go to Connie's right now and you can go sit on their patio and they don't have any limitations in the general commercial, GC code. So I think we felt just there was a few more, staff recommendations, restrictions being put on this unfairly rather than being in the space. And so we're just hopeful that we have this opportunity. Again, we might close at 9 when we decide our hours and we get there. We're still about 24 plus months being able to, from construction to opening. So we've got a little bit of time, but we wanted this flexibility as we start opening phase 1 and want to be able to test waters and do some pop-up events and different things like that. Again, I just want to say that from my perspective, our team is obviously just wants to make sure we take care of our community. We don't want this to be a place where it's, you know, loud music or anything like that. Our intent is to be able to have these different community events throughout the year and different things like that. So just a little bit more about that space. And then there will be this CMU wall, which is basically kind of a concrete brick wall with a cedar fence gate. And then there will be a secondary fence as well behind that and another wall. So between that patio and the nearest duplex or residential property, there are 2 different fence or kind of screenings that helping kind of keep us away from them and hopefully our sound as we hope to aim everything more at a north direction. So just wanted to give that little clarification on that as well.
So I confused myself, I think.
Me too.
Is the disconnect, for lack of a better term, that you guys have with the planning department in the hours of operation for that patio centered around its usage for food service? Or is it the inclusion of outdoor music?
So we had both, and both, there was recommendations made on both. I am totally fine on the music outdoor recommendations of, that is the will, the desire to go that way. We're okay to concede there and say, hey, we'll turn the music off. I think it says, I don't know, from 9 o'clock and on weekdays and 11 o'clock on
Friday and
weekends.
Saturday.
I'm okay with that recommendation versus what we requested. The more hang up I have is on closing patio service on weekdays by 9 o'clock.
I thought that was the case, but I wanted to make sure.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And you wanna close the patio, the service, on the patio at what time?
We have it currently listed, I think
At
11 o'clock.
PM for weekdays and midnight on the weekends was what we proposed in our initial request. And you can see that, if you have a copy of the staff report.
11 weekdays and 12 weekends.
Yes,
Right.
Saturday, Friday, Saturday.
yes, ma'am.
And the music is different.
So the music was previously identified the same way, and staff's request in their markups to us was that outdoor music be shut off by 9 PM Sunday through Thursday and 11 PM on Friday and Saturday on the patio space alone. There's also then a section for those events, and those hours of operation were also requested to be modified.
And how many feet would you say, how far away is it from that patio space to the first residential property?
So the patio is here. This property is not zoned residential, but it is residentially developed. So that's about 200 feet, 150 feet. From this patio space. Again, the speakers and the stage are both northward facing. So all of that sound will be directionally pointing away from, there's gonna be ambient noise that comes back, but it is intentionally pointed away from those residential uses.
There's a fence.
And there is a wall and a fence, yes, so here, there is a masonry wall and a fence being constructed.
Okay. How tall is the fence?
It's a 6-foot standard, I believe, maybe 8. No taller than, it can't be any taller than 8 without a variance, so.
And there's been, community notifications for.
Yes, so the notification area for this is 750 feet. So from the border of this blue that you see, 750 feet in every direction, they received notification about the public hearing, also about this meeting tonight, and then for the planning commission on Thursday. And I missed it. Have you heard any comments? So no formal comments have come in at this point. Yes, sir.
So if I'm hearing right, a daylight between the two proposals, as long as the patio matches two buildings that are clean usage, that's good, and you're willing to concede on the music. And
Correct.
then you are amenable to also, not, I hope I don't throw a wrench in things, also amenable to restrictions on the parking lot when it's used for community events as well. Is that, am I hearing the synergy between the two there?
We can, it's to 9 PM shut off for a summertime event is a little challenging to swallow, if we're being frank. Even for an outdoor event, again, we're not planning these every week.
Right.
But how late does the fiesta normally go? 11. So the challenge that we have is, let's say fiesta needs to be a Thursday. Well, by code that we've now agreed on, we're limiting ourselves for that event, depending on what those corporate sponsors are able to support or any of those things. So that's the challenge that we have there. Yes, sir.
What is the idea of the portable screening? What is that?
So the purpose of screening,
No, I mean, what's the idea of the, what are you thinking about in particular about?
so you can do, temporary fence can have slats in it, either in fabric or in like thick plastic. Both temporary and permanent chain link fence, so you can put up basically a temporary chain link fence and have it anchored and supported that could have more
Visual barrier.
and a little bit, it wouldn't provide much sound barrier, if I'm being honest. I'm
I mean,
also a
isn't that
civil
the
engineer.
point though?
Partly, yes, partly is sound, but partly is just visual. I'd have to speak on what Philip speak.
Our idea with the screening, understanding of just the proximity, you're not really gonna be impacting the sound from a 6-foot fence, is primarily the screening.
Visual.
Essentially bringing the property into compliance with the zoning aspect of a screening that would normally be required now if they were going to.
And there's none there today.
Correct, there is nothing on that west side today. And to Phil's point, if this was a new construction and this parking lot wasn't there, we would have to do something to be in compliance with the zone. So we're aware of that, we understand that, which is also why you'll notice like in the landscaping, we'll bring the parking lot up to code if we ever rebuild it from landscaping, but for now, we're just leaving it as is. We'd like to find another middle ground on the screening side of a temporary fence if feasible.
So I think those lots on those residential properties, they're kind of, the backyards are accessible from that alley, am I right?
Yes, and a number of them utilize the alley, you can kind of see that. This structure here has a lot of parking in the back, so they are utilizing that alley, yes. Most of the yard that you would call it would be on the side here or in the front. The back is primarily parking until you get to this structure. This structure is the first one that really has a large amount of green space, that you would consider yard space. This one too has a little bit, but they've got a pretty substantial shed in the backyard. Space. So those are kind of your two, it kind of bunny hops, right? Every other has yard space versus not.
Well, I think it's a spectacular project. I've advocated for something like this for years. I do have a little concern for the residents, however, they didn't show up, so I don't know.
Could we say that if you're gonna need to when, I assume at some point the parking lot need to be redone and be brought to code, could we put some sort of restriction on or not a restriction, but a suggestion as to what kind of barrier, say it's like a vegetation barrier or something? I feel like we've heard a lot from folks, just something, because as we're talking about it, it's used by the residents there. I'm now becoming more concerned about people leaving events and just moseying down the alley in people's backyards, which would not be ideal. Something maybe
So you're concerned like the end of a community event that people would be meandering to the left?
Without a barrier, perhaps.
Sure. Well, and that's where the temporary barrier for those community events where that parking lot is being utilized as not a parking lot. That was our thought on also that temporary scenario is you're creating security then to protect those residents in those community events.
Sorry, and
You're okay.
the issue for the screening for you all is,
Right now?
Yeah.
The issue for permanent screening is twofold. Number one, constructability. There's not a lot of space. Right now, there's pavement up to our property line, so we'll have to do some finagling and make pavement improvements, which can quickly get very substantial with the other things that we're working on budget-wise. It's just not ideal to try and tackle right now. And number two, the concern is a permanent screening along that alley, is just another opportunity for like, right now, it's open, so you can
Creative
see.
artwork.
Creating artwork or even illegal dumping, you know, if you're giving people a place to hide, as terrible as it is, it's the nature of the community that we live in.
and is it the full length of your property line that is difficult for the construction? Or is, okay.
Yes,
I was just thinking,
because of where the parking lot is.
yeah, I was just wondering if that bottom, that sort of southwestern corner, if just
Here?
for that one place that's not a parking lot.
Sure.
But if it's just as hard to do it there,
In the current condition, it is, yes.
I mean, it seems to me that event screening or temporary screening for an event to keep people from going that way makes a lot of sense. And if it's not going up for noise barrier, then
Yeah, to be code compliant, it's visual barrier only for now.
I agree. And I'd add that, you know, I think the mission, if you will, of the building itself to be a community event space does add it to be, you know, a little bit outside the box when we start thinking about a 6-foot fence that runs 120 feet. You know, we want it to be open. We want to celebrate what's going on at this building within, you know, if outdoor, indoor, whatever's going on. I think this needs to be a showcase of the community, and putting a fence along there takes away.
Public, anybody from the sidebar questions, and we'll.
I have one quick question for Philip.
Yeah.
Can you give us some insight into how the planning commission will do this? If we put some kind of a restriction on the hours that are different than the staff recommendation, will the planning commission look at that, or will they just forge their own way and go into the city
If
council?
DAB happens first, we do communicate what the DAB recommendation is for their consideration. What they do with that, like, it depends on the case, it depends who's president of planning commission, so I don't really have a bead.
Yeah, you can't predict how they're gonna handle that, I'm just curious what they consider, so, okay.
Mr. Washburn, did you have another question?
I was just curious whether, and I'm just asking you for an opinion, obviously you can't speak for it, whether the staff would be amenable to the idea of extending patio hours with the music shut off.
Well, I will say our purpose of the outdoor patio hours for dining was for consistency in terms of like enforcement or just trying to not make it complicated.
Yeah.
Whereas like we're, you know, having outdoor music shut off at a certain time, we just basically went for outdoor items, outdoor noise generating things. So that's really the basis where we were evaluating this and like running through all the different scenarios. I can tell you that it was more from a place of consistency than anything else. If that helps you. Yes, ma'am.
I personally live on that street and I live really close. It's like just at the end of the block.
Okay.
And I've never been personally bothered by any noise. It's really common to hear like events going on, especially like by Nomar.
Gotcha.
And there's like parking lots where people from like the Catholic churches practice their dances. It's really just common to have noises down there, and it's never been a bother for me because I've lived on that. I lived on that street my whole time.
That's a good reason. I think two council members, white papers probably get to the public.
Yes,
so
there's
don't forget.
questions from the public.
Vince Hancock from Delano, but I've worked in this neighborhood before, just got 5 bullet points off the top of my head.
I think you guys are already working on a compromise. It may complicate things a little bit, but I think the idea of having separate hours for the noise versus for dining, not a lot of us are really loud eaters, so if somebody wants to eat a little later because of the sunset, go for it. I think that makes perfect sense. I like the idea of the compromising on the permanent fence that could be attracting more nuisances versus a temporary fence. We've all seen it outside of events like River Festival, that you just put that fence up there. I think there may be opportunities for a clawback if that temporary fencing is not put in place for special events, then you lose the zoning, goes back to GC. That's a possibility to think of. If you'll indulge me, I want to pivot into noise ordinance enforcement. Maggie got an email on this within the last week. I challenge anybody to prove to me that our police department is actually enforcing the ordinance. And I challenge the law department to prove to me that the ordinance that received a change within the last 5 years is even constitutional. Right now, the ordinance says that if I'm an officer and I charge you with a violation of the ordinance, you have to have a certified sound engineer that proves that you weren't too loud. That's upside down. That's guilty until proven innocent. We can't do that. We've got to fix this noise ordinance. And we've got to enforce it. There are certain holidays in the year where I've actually made 911 calls and the police department drove right by where the noise was at. They turned it down while the officer drove by and they turned it right back up after they left. We're not getting enforcement. That is not your responsibility, but it's separate from the sending case, so don't put this on Eric. He's gonna be a good neighbor. We know that. But I encourage you guys to get a report, ask Maggie, work together, advise her to get a report from the police department. How many times a year are we enforcing this noise ordinance? And how many times are people being convicted? It needs to get cleaned up because there are other areas where people are going, I can't sleep at night because people are being noisy. And the police department goes, when it comes to parking and when it comes to noise ordinance, they don't want to do their job. We have to work together to tell them that that's important to our neighbors. Any questions?
Anything else from the public? Any back to the bench? Any questions? Anyone want to entertain a motion?
If you, I'm gonna go over essentially the 4 debatable points, just so everybody kind of has it fresh in their mind. So we're talking about parking. Staff recommendation is that the parking be utilized for the buildings and there's not a community event. It sounds like you guys are okay with that. And then we had the screening fence. Their request was to do temporary screening along the west side during events only. Staff recommendation was the permanent screening fence. Hours of operation, they would like the outdoor food and drink service to be till 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and till 11 p.m. midnight on Friday and Saturday. Staff was looking at 9 p.m. to 11. And then outdoor music or just outdoor events, staff was doing 9 and 11. They were looking at 11 and midnight as well.
To me, it just sort of looks like those buildings and the patio, that's just all one building. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to bifurcate the inside that out, the noise and time stuff with the patio. That just seems overly complicated to me.
As long as the music is shut off.
Well, I don't even think that's really a big deal.
It can't even be that loud. It's gonna
Yeah.
have 2 walls.
Two
then
walls and a
anyone will be
fence.
able to talk.
And one in north.
I disagree. I'm sorry.
Well, it's also just an hour. Not like it's that much longer, you know.
That's really close to residential.
Yeah. If you were living there, you'd know the difference.
Oh, I live by the loudest factory in town.
I live across from St. Pat's and it's, yeah.
Anyone ready to make a motion or is it still more discussion?
Well, shoot, I'll make a motion and see what happens. So if I've got this straight, and this is open for comment as I make the motion, up to a point. So I would move that we approve the staff recommendation with the exception that the permanent screening requirement be modified or changed to allow temporary screening instead, if I've understood what you guys are asking for. Also, that in agreement, parking would be handled as staff has requested with the inclusion or the addition of having special parking plans for approval by the parking administration, whoever that is. And then third, that the outdoor patio hours be extended as requested with the music discontinued at the documented hours per staff.
Is that a motion?
That's a
I
motion.
forgot the beginning.
Yeah.
And then I second.
All in
So
favor?
you'd have different hours that you can have dining, people can eat and have their patio time, but the music would be shut off early.
Outdoor music only, right? Yes, the outdoor music.
Just making sure everybody's on.
Okay, all in favor?
Hold on, hold on.
I assume they would ask, sorry, any discussion?
Yeah, so the one thing that wasn't covered is, I'm fortunate since I'm sitting in front of a computer, is item 9 is the outdoor events time. Are we suggesting we're going to limit those per staff recommendation?
I didn't suggest any changes from that in the
Right.
motion I made.
Right.
If
Would
they
you
only,
be amenable to an amendment that would strike that portion of that staff recommendation to allow for the outdoor events to follow the same timeline as indoor events?
going to 11 o'clock on weekdays and midnight on Friday and Saturday?
It's
No,
correct.
no, I will not make that part of my motion.
Well, we have a motion on the table in a second, so we can vote on that if somebody else can bring
Do
it.
something else.
So, does everybody understand Bill's motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I run through it again?
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
Parking statement was the screening fence modified to first to left temporary screen. And then the patio is brought into accordance with two structures, which between and outdoor events are 9 on Sunday through Thursday, 11 Friday, Saturday. In there.
No, they would have 11 o'clock on weekdays and midnight on Saturday and Sunday.
For the
Friday and
music or the
Saturday.
patio?
Well, that's.
Oh, that's just for the
what they're
patio.
asking.
Music goes off at 9 o'clock.
Music goes off, but then service continues till 11.
Food
I
service.
can't
Yeah.
understand them, so.
Sorry. Music stops at 9, food service continues to 11.
Okay, Lisa has seconded it.
That's correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
2? Scott?
I voted as I was an aye.
Okay.
So that's 7 to 2.
7 to 2. Thank you all very much. Moving on to the next zoning case. 4-452.
Even for the record, Philip Ziebenbergen with planning staff, zone 2452 is a zone change request. The property is currently double zoned, single family and two family, and they're requesting multifamily and MFA. The property has street addresses 317 and 321 North Doris. This is just north of Second Street on the west side of Doris. In February of 2024, so not too long ago, a request was.
Yeah.
Okay. A request was made for the property address 321 North Doris to go from single family to two family residential. That was approved. So they were planning on building a duplex on that side and on the other. Since then, they have changed their mind and they're looking to develop a site holistically under MF18. And given the zoning density of 17.4 dwelling units an acre, they're looking to develop 4 duplexes, which would give you 8 dwelling units on the property. The staff report identifies different changes in your development standards. Essentially, MF18 actually has a little bit tighter setback restrictions, particularly the street side setback, which I think goes from 15 feet to 20 feet, but this does actually have street side setback. So they're essentially the same. So the one difference is you'll see that the maximum height technically shows 45 feet, but based on the proximity of single family or two family zoning, they would have to be restricted to at least 5 feet based on compatibility height standards. So they would not actually be able to achieve the 45 feet because of the compatibility height standards. Going to multifamily zoning kicks in screening requirements, 6-foot screening fence on the south, west and north sides. That would also have to include landscaping. There's different parking requirements for multifamily, and so on and so forth. You just want to go to the zoning map. Yep, there you go. So you can see it's the double zone. The north portion of the property was the one that was rezoned earlier this year. You can see surrounding the property is SF5. Everything in yellow is TF3 zoning, whether it's develop a single family or duplex, but that has the opportunity for duplex. Anything in dark brown is B multifamily zoning. And so you do have multifamily zoning with multifamily development within a couple blocks to the east. The comp plan identifies the area for residential that includes all residential densities. And then the Wichita Places for People plan looks to provide a diversity of housing options and do infill development not only to maximize public infrastructure, but to again give diversity of housing options. It encourages infill development that's contextual to the area. And so there is, with multifamily already, they're looking at duplex structures in a multifamily context. So you have duplexes already present in the area as well as multifamily present in the area as well. Staff is recommending approval of this. This one is also going to Planning Commission on Thursday. We have not heard any comments from neighbors that I'm aware of up until this point, and I can stand for any questions.
Public.
I am opposed. I live on the corner of Second and Doris. I have the same size property as one of those lots. There's no way you're gonna put a fourplex on there and have room for families to park.
Kids to play.
That is a dirt road and you're adding 8 to 16 vehicles in that area. Kids walking the street going to and from school, because there are no sidewalks. 90% of people do not stop. They roll through if they slow down. The map that you had up there earlier.
With B on the properties, could you bring that back up, please? There.
Now that is misleading. The big area in brown that you have, there where the cursor is an elementary school. That takes up roughly the outline there. The bigger area.
To the left.
To the left of that is a park. It is not multifamily living. And it runs all the way to Doris. The only multi-family area is on Second to the north of the school. It is 2 buildings that have, I think it's 8 on each. It's a 2-level, has 8 apartments on each section, 16. But that property is larger than the 2 that are in question. So we've got an issue of traffic, dirt road, and overdeveloping the land. Twin home, possibly, I could see that, but a multifamily, there's not enough room for it.
Do we have any idea when that road is slated to be paved?
I'm trying to look.
Good luck with that.
Second and Doris.
There is a bunch of Dorises on. That's what I was pulled this out for. You guys go ahead and I'll see if I can figure.
When they're all gonna be paved by 2032 or something like that, is that right?
No, that was before the council.
To the point of not having space for parks.
How many bedrooms will these
I don't know.
dwellings have?
And if you look at the ones that are colored for the twin or two family, most of those are double lots as far as the width. So depending on how you build a structure on that lot, you're gonna have to go deep. So you're gonna come in off of Doris and you're gonna be looking at the end of the structure, not the front, where you typically your door is going to be. Is even that's tight in my consideration. I can understand it. That's the way a lot of the properties are going now. But to put in a fourplex, it's gotta see it. It's overdeveloping for that property. The apartment complex that I mentioned earlier across from the school has two drives, one off of DV and one off of 7. And here you're gonna have a single drive, I'm assuming, or one on each side of the property. And I know on my property, I couldn't have a drive coming in off the doors. There's not enough room. So when I had the house built, I purposely changed it to where the drive was coming in off the 2nd.
Did you find it on this?
It's not that far. No. There is gonna be some road work done on Doris, but it's not quite close to there.
The proposal is to put 8 duplexes on the property,
Or which would be 8 dwelling, correct?
and is the applicant here?
I don't think so. They haven't.
Agent or applicant?
But did we approve this to half the amount and now it's 2 lots instead of 1? So options for the DAB, the zoning code does give the opportunity to recommend approval of lesser zoning classifications. Just for your tool belt that you're looking at, well, we do essentially 2 lots that are TF3. TF3 and the MF18 they're asking for is 1 step above TF3, so there's nothing in between them. But just for your tool belt of approval, denial, or something in between is you actually can recommend approval of a lesser intense zoning classification than requested, which in this case would be TF3. That's the only thing under the bit. Essentially, you could say like the southern portion could be rezoned, but not to the whole thing. Not to F18. The southern part could be rezoned from TF3 to match the northern portion. Could be an option. I'm just again trying to give you tools in your tool belt.
So if you did TF3, you get to do two duplexes.
Correct. Because in TF3 zoning, you would require a conditional use in order to do multifamily. So having 2 lots that are TF3, they would have to be a duplex each. That's potentially 8. 4, so you would have 4 dwelling units instead of 8.
But does the developer show parking for that many units?
We have those site plans are not required for zone changes. I will say he can propose 8 dwelling units, but you have to meet all of their requirements for screening, space for landscaping. You have to be able to park it. Like all of those things have to happen, or he's not going to get it. You could,
Tiny home duplexes.
or he would reduce his density.
Because we're talking about like 1/12 of an acre roughly per duplex if we do 8.
So if they're
Is
not
that
able
what
to
it's
meet all
saying?
the requirements, they essentially give up dwelling units in order to meet all the other requirements. And that's just something that is
Okay.
done during the plan review process for building permits. Is they would have to lay it out and be able to meet all of the standards for the zoning code and other codes. And if they can't, and they need more space to meet those codes, they would have to start removing dwelling units. And it kind of becomes a chicken and the egg.
Right.
thing.
So what you're, I mean, just to sort of summarize, what you're saying is there's all kinds of things already that we already know are in place for these kinds of units in terms of the demands, the parameters that are there, and sounding fairly unlikely there you meet them in the first place.
Possibly, they also could just do very small dwelling units. I think. There's no definition of the size of a dwelling unit other than a building code
Right,
square footage.
okay.
Our zoning code does not have
So-
square footage, you know, they don't all have to be 3-bedroom
Five
duplexes.
hundred square foot
No.
little
We don't know.
place on top of a place.
Well, the flip. I may misunderstand this, but I'm thinking the flip side of this is that if it goes MF18 and they can't meet their density requirements based on the available square footage of the lots, instead of building duplexes, they could build an apartment complex.
Right. Unless there's other zoning language on there that restricts it to just duplex structures.
And then you've got a lot more cars.
And again, absolutely no green space for kids to play.
Well, if you do
You've
that,
got them
you-
walking up to the park, but again, that's not safe.
If you put in some type of an apartment complex, you're gonna typically, in the middle of a block, you're gonna have one drive. I just don't see that being feasible.
It's the size.
Any more questions from
Affordable
the-
housing availability.
From the public, before we bring it back to the bench? Any more discussions from the bench? Okay.
I will make the motion to rezone the southern parcel PS3.
So both parcels then would end up being T3.
Correct. Having a number of units.
I'd second that.
Yeah.
Did everyone understand the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. We're going to move on to the next zoning case. Zoning 2024-0054.
Yes, this is a zoning application also for MF18. This property is located on Hoover and Robinson. This is North Hoover Street, north of 9th Street. So right as Hoover starts curving along the highway before it turns back east as it heads towards the boulevard. The property is currently zoned single-family residential. It's currently undeveloped. If you want to go to the aerial map of the zoning, or actually go to the site plan. They actually provided a site plan with this one. This property is 1.2 acres in size. And MF18 at 17.4 dwelling units an acre yields 20 dwelling units. And they're looking again at duplex structures that would yield 20 dwelling units. So that'd be 10 total duplexes for 20 dwelling units. You can see, I know they're looking at an internal parking structure or parking lot, should not say structure, that implies multi-levels parking lot. This applicant did come to planning for a development review and they had some initial site plans. This was reworked. That doesn't necessarily preclude like they got special approval or anything, and I'm just saying they have been working with planning staff on layout and provision of utilities and things like that. This one also going to MF18 would require screening on the north side and the east side and the south side because the south side does not have parking lot on it. If it did have parking lot, they would do that screening via landscaping. And then the way the parking lot is set up, the landscaping for the parking lot would just be along Hoover because the buildings block the parking lot from Robinson. And other landscaping would be the landscape tree buffer, which is one shade tree for 40 linear feet or substitute 2 ornamentals along the north, east, and south property lines. All of that would have to be developed with this property. Again, parking is 1.25 parking stalls for 1-bedroom apartments or 1-bedroom duplexes in this case, or 1.75 for 2-bedroom or larger. I believe we did the math and the current count that they have meets that requirement. So they don't have any deficiencies there that they would have to work through. You go to the zoning map now on a couple pages down, one more, there you go. I think you're gonna all agree that this area is more in transition. This is not the first zoning case in this general area. It wasn't that long ago that this property down here farther south on Hoover was going through the process. So we have MF 18 there on Hoover, the green square there is MF 29. The property to the direct east is TF 3. They have multifamily, the protective overlay that's on there limited them to 2 duplexes total, so that was 4 dwelling units. Staff's perspective on this, there's still quite a bit in this area. But with this being on the edge where you have Hoover and then on the other side of Hoover, you have I-235. It is a considerable jump in density when you have 20 dwelling units, but Hoover is a fairly main street that connects, Zoom Boulevard and Central. And again, being on the west edge of the neighborhood versus being kind of in the central area, that kind of lended us to having the recommendation for approval versus having this same level of density somewhere in the middle. So staff is recommending approval. Up till this point, not that I'm aware that we've received any comments. What's interesting, and we're actually getting some funding to do some updates to our comprehensive plan. The comp plan actually identifies this property as appropriate for commercial uses, possibly because it's effectively a frontage over 235. There's several things with the land use plan we're starting to realize are a little bit outdated, possibly. We actually have some funding, hopefully we can get them updated next year. So like actually higher density development at a 17.4 dwelling unit an acre is actually less intense than what the comp plan identified it for. Could be appropriate. Again, those are guidelines, so even though it says commercial, doesn't necessarily mean it should be appropriate for commercial uses. So again, overall staff is recommending approval. This is also the agenda for Thursday. Did I mention snacks? We have like 15 zoning items. Anyway, it's our only meeting in December, and that's our problem. Holiday, the other rhythm would be having it the day after Christmas, and who's gonna show up for a meeting the day after Christmas? So
No.
everybody turned it in to get things done by the end of the year. So again, staff is recommending approval. I can stand for any questions you have. We do have Garber, a representative from Garber, who's the agent for the applicants, present tonight if you have any questions for them.
I just wanted to clarify, there's been no opposition to it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is this back right up to a very single-family residential area, like the last one we were just looking at?
Yeah, not that I'm aware. The property to the north is undeveloped. You get farther north and there's a church. And again, you have an industrial zone right here.
Okay.
So again, this being the edge of it, it's a fairly undeveloped area to the north and to the west. You get more developed inward as you go into the neighborhood. Robinson is the gravel street, Hoover is paved.
I'll just make a couple quick comments. There are duplexes already, so the picture there to the west, there's a pair of duplexes to the west there. Like he said, this is a less intense use than what the comp plan is proposing. The way it's facing onto Hoover, it's kind of facing away from all the other neighbors. We're not dumping traffic into the neighborhood, it's going out onto Hoover, so it's not gonna have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood itself. So the question about when is the gravel streets gonna be done, that got stretched way out. We checked on Robinson when we were meeting with staff on this. It's scheduled for 2042. I have a different project. It's 2050, so I'll probably be dead before that one's paved, but, so yes. There are some really long windows out there for paved roads. This one, that was one of the things that forced us to reconsider our configuration on the lot. We originally had been talking MF 29 with a protective overlay to limit it to get a couple more units on it, but by the time you started dealing with the unpaved road, it wasn't practical, so we went with a slightly less intense usage based on the staff recommendations. So we worked with staff on it. The utilities are all there. We've worked with them as what the extensions would be. These will be the 2-story duplexes. I do want to mention just the ones with the sloped roofs, they won't be here. Thank you. I want to mention that. Because
That is a good thing to say.
I'm personally not a fan of the way those look. I despise is maybe a word that comes to mind, but one of the partners has been Farha with Farha Roofing, and he will not put that on there. He's gonna put gable or hip roofs on. So with that, I'll take any other questions you might have.
Mr. Washburn, I will let you know that DAP 3, unbeknownst to you, is calling them chicken coops too. So synergy amongst districts.
But are they calling it the Washburn Amendment?
I was gonna say.
That's fantastic.
I think it's interesting that we've had lots of conversations about dirt roads, but, you know, District Six represents a huge part of the core, and District Six has 40% of all the unpaved roads in the city. So we still have a lot of work to do, but it just blows my mind every time we talk about it, that we're still in the middle of the city and, or in the core and still.
It just takes money.
I know, I understand. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Any other questions for the agent, questions for Phil, or is anyone,
And I do have to apologize. My name's Ken Lee. I'm with Garver, so I don't.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
It's my
any questions from the public? Okay, anybody have a discussion or motion?
Whoever makes the motion, I appreciate what you're saying, and I trust you, but I'd still like to have that overlay on there.
Yeah, well, the overlay was specifically to limit it to the one use, but we wouldn't be opposed to that.
No, no.
Even if it duplexes.
The
It's been
Washburn.
pretty typical having these go through the protective overlay that requires a gable roof.
Oh,
Is what you're planning on doing anyway.
gotcha, yeah, well,
But it would solidify that if somehow your project fell through and somebody else picked it up. they would
Next
have
guy
to-
comes along,
yeah, well, and like I said, Ben Farhog, he's a roof, he owns Farhog Roofing. He's not putting the chicken coop roofs on there, so if that's a
No.
requirement, he's not gonna care.
you say this is Glenn,
No, Ben Farhog. He would not be opposed to that requirement.
I'll motion to approve with the Washburn Amendment.
The protective overlay
Washburn
requires gable roofs. Got it.
overlay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
did you get Scott's order?
Scott,
You got me. It's an eye. I blended.
You go.
I'm sorry to get this one done.
thank you. All right, moving on to the last zoning case, 2024-0055.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a property located at 1331 North Santa Fe. And Fe is paid at this location. Property is currently zone B multifamily. They're requesting limited industrial, which is actually going back to what it was before the Midtown plan. When plans get enacted and they come with a zoning component to them, people would have to opt out of that, and it was likely something where, the Midtown plan was adopted, I think, in 2004. That was what rezoned this to multifamily, because that's what that land use plan identified would be appropriate along the railroad. And many of the properties around this property opted out and kept their limited industrial zoning. This one, for whatever reason, I haven't been in the planning department when a plan has been established that had a zoning component and what that process looks like of reaching out and communicating and getting, buy-in or opting out or whatever. So I really can't speak to how that works, but that's essentially how this one got to be multifamily. When it's been an industrial use, they would like to expand their industrial use. In order to do that, they have to come into compliance with code because they're currently non-compliant. So it would not only bring their current facility into compliance, which has a whole lot of benefits to it, depending on, Mother Nature and things like that. But then it would also be able to let them expand their use as well. So that's what they're asking to do. Kind of for the sake of time, the comp plan identifies it for resident industrial development. It was the Midtown plan that was looking to lessen the intensity of it, and that's where it got rezoned to be multifamily. We do have Kirk Miller with KU Miller. He's representing the applicant. If you have any questions for him, and I can stand for anybody. We have not heard anything about it. There is residential to the west. The properties that face St. Francis are zone residential, but if you look up and down Santa Fe, they're predominantly industrial zoned along the railroad track.
This is currently being used for industrial? or
Yeah,
this is-
essentially the use never ceased, even if the zoning changed. That's again, some of where the confusion came in of like, I don't know how the communication process was. Either way, it's a non-conforming use, it's been used industrially, they're not fitting into it, they would like to expand.
Well, that's why it's non-compliant.
Correct.
It's because
Is-
it changed on me.
The zoning got changed on them essentially, don't know where that fell through. It's been utilized this way for a while, even though technically the zoning got changed. So they're going back to industrial to bring it into compliance and have the opportunity to expand.
Same street there, man, you have a 12th Street to pay right south of it. Well, oh, it.
Any questions for Phil? Open it up to the public, any questions? Back to Ben. Payroll, whatever we're calling this. Any discussion or motion? There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Somebody doing the right thing.
let's see, really quick. The new 2025 meeting calendar is open. Thank you for coming. So with all the DAB meetings, we are doing bi-monthly coffees next month. Or next year, I mean, that sounds really crazy.
Starting in the new.
Yes, Anna, do you have any announcements?
I do have a question for board members. Would you guys like me to send out calendar invites so it's permanently on your calendar?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
I can go ahead and do that. And would you like a calendar invite for the coffees as well?
Sure.
All right.
Anybody else have any announcements?
Anything that has the word coffee in it.
So seconds,
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Great, thank you guys so much.
Sale line, Scott.